7:05, we are one day away from the secret ballot that's going to be voted on in the United States Senate on the next Senate Majority Leader. And it looks like there are three options to keep an eye on here. There's Rick Scott out of Florida, there is John Thune out of South Dakota, and then there's John Cornyn out of Texas. Many of the more Trump-aligned individuals in social media world, in influencer world, and even in the political realm are backing Rick Scott out of Florida. Rick Scott just won his second term last week as Florida senator. He won it by double digits. There was some thought that it might be a little closer, but Rick Scott rolled to another win. John Thune is perceived to be Mitch McConnell's preferred choice. And then there's John Cornyn, who's kind of caught in between. John Cornyn is somebody who got backed by Josh Hawley. Just last week, Josh Hawley made that announcement on this show last week when I didn't think he was going to say what he said. I didn't even know what direction he was going to go. But Josh Hawley came on this show and endorsed John Cornyn out of Texas as Senate Majority Leader.
You know, I've decided I'm going to vote for John Cornyn from Texas. And the reason is a couple-fold. Number one, I think that Cornyn will work very closely and effectively with President Trump. We were just talking a minute ago. I saw the tail end of the first Trump term. I saw how Mitch McConnell obstructed much of Trump's agenda, and that just cannot happen again. And I believe that Cornyn will get the Senate working. I believe he will work hand in glove with President Trump to deliver for the American people on the agenda that we've been talking about. Number two, Cornyn has said that he believes in term limits, and he has endorsed term limits for leadership. I just think that's so important. I'm a term limits guy. I think when you have people in office, you know, McConnell was leader for 20 years just about. That is too long, way too long, and you could see it in the performance. And I think the fact that Cornyn has come out and said, no, we need term limits. We need to make sure that we don't have these politicians who are so out of touch, can't do their jobs anymore. I think that that is absolutely vital. And also he supports things that are important to Missouri. Pete Cornyn does. He has said that he'll support, for example, the radiation compensation program, which we've got so many people in our state exposed to nuclear radiation by the government. The government's never cleaned it up, never done anything about it. And Cornyn has said that he'll support our efforts to get that passed, get Missourians compensated. That is really important to our state.
So that was Josh Hawley on the show on Friday, and he got a lot of crap in the wake of that endorsement on social media. Now, social media is not real life, but he got a lot of crap from a lot of people on the right on social media on Friday for that announcement on this show, I will add. So where does this race stand? I don't know. There will be a secret ballot vote tomorrow amongst the Republicans to pick the next Senate Majority Leader. Donald Trump has not come out and said anything about his preferred candidate yet. There's, of course, time for that, but he has not said anything yet. I think the big thing for Donald Trump is making sure that whoever he picks has a chance to win. He doesn't want to pick the loser in this thing, right? That wouldn't be a good look for him. But just so you know, I did reach out to some of our other U.S. senators in Kansas and Missouri. I tried to get Eric Schmidt on the show today to talk about this and was told he could not make it. I tried to get Roger Marshall on the Kansas side on this. I was told, well, actually, let me see where that conversation ended. Oh, they were still working on it. So that was as of yesterday, late afternoon. And then Jerry Moran, I admit I did not reach out to. And I like Jerry Moran, but every time I try to get him on the show, it's like I'm asking him to join me on a trip to the moon or something. It's like, dude, I just want to talk on the phone for 7 minutes with the audience. Like, that's all I really need. It's not that complicated. So I admit I didn't reach out. I can reach out to Jerry Moran and kind of get his sense on this thing as well. I will do that today. But everybody is suddenly being very tight-lipped on this thing. And I don't think that's by accident. I believe there's a lot of angst right now in Republican ranks on this decision to who is going to be the next Senate Majority Leader. And until Donald Trump says something and maybe backs one of these three guys, I believe it's going to be a very close vote. I think what you'll have is three guys who will each have their preferred candidates. There will be the more Mitch McConnell type who will back John Thune. There will be those who will back Rick Scott, more of the younger, more Trump-ish, more MAGA type of U.S. senator who will back Rick Scott. And then there'll be people in between who, for some reason or another, might back John Cornyn. But here's why I'm less concerned about this maybe than some other people are. This is not 2016. Let's say it's John Thune out of South Dakota, who's perceived as the much more moderate guy. You can't look at the results last week from the election and not come to the conclusion that Donald Trump got a mandate for his agenda. Not your agenda, whatever that is. Not Mitch McConnell's agenda from 10 years ago. Not Paul Ryan's agenda. Not Eric Cantor's agenda. Kevin McCarthy's agenda. I'm trying to go back to the old school. Mitt Romney's agenda. No, Donald Trump got an agenda for his policy positions last week. You can't say this is a flash in the pan. You can't say this is 2016 and this was a mistake. Oh, well, it's because Hillary was such a bad candidate. No, Donald Trump got a mandate. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College by the widest margin since 1988. They picked up seats in the Senate. It's not close. I don't believe that whoever wins this thing will really end up, and maybe some of you will say this is naive, and I'm fine hearing your opinion on that at 913-408-7957. But there's only so much pushback they're going to be able to achieve. In the end, what this job is about to me is, one, corralling Republicans to make sure they're on board, they've got the majority, and making sure you don't lose any Republicans when it comes to major legislation. So somebody who's got to do a good job of deal-making and peacemaking and is well-liked. And then part two of that is fundraising. And you might not like that, but that is a big part of this job. That U.S. Senate race in Texas with Ted Cruz that Democrats tried to flip with Colin Allred, you know how much money they dumped into that race on both sides? $160 million. You've got to have the pipeline to the big donors. And it sucks that that's the case in American politics today, but it's not changing anytime soon. That's one of the reasons that John Cornyn is getting a lot of love. He's raised $400 million over his career for U.S. Senate candidates. And those help guys all around the country and gals all around the country either win races, get reelected, things like that. But the fact that Trump has not said anything yet is an encouragement to me that he knows whoever it ends up being is going to have to work hand in glove with him, is going to have to do basically not what he tells them to do, but is on board with his agenda. Because there is no other way to spin the results from last week. It's not 8 years ago. It's not Trump won, but this is a mistake. And Trump's got enough of his people now in charge of key parts of the government that he is not going to get bulldozed by some of these old guard members who might try to hold on to whatever power they have left. I don't have a ton of concern about that just yet until he speaks. Because you know and I both know that if Trump really didn't want one of these candidates, he'd try to eliminate them. Figuratively speaking, of course. He would say, no matter what, we can't have fill in the blank, John Thune, John Cornyn, whoever it might be. He hasn't done that yet. And that tells me, at least as of now, until proven otherwise, he feels like he's going to be able to work with each of these three if they do become Senate Majority Leader. But I do not like the fact that this thing has gone to a secret ballot tomorrow for Senate Republicans. At least be transparent. Stand by your vote and who you're backing. To me, that's just be a man, be a woman about it. Whoever you're backing, be willing to tell your constituents who you're voting for. Please. That is very weak that we're looking at this thing being a secret ballot. What are you afraid of? Or should I say, who are you afraid of? And if there's this perception that, I'm afraid of Donald Trump if I don't back the candidate he wants, he hasn't said anything anyway yet. So what are you afraid of? Your own constituents? 913-408-7957. We'll get to you as we roll through the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Traditional Americans have stopped the madness. That is well said there by Bill O'Reilly. 7:23 on a Tuesday morning on KCMO 95.7 FM. I know that there is a lot of angst in some corners when it comes to the next Senate Majority Leader, and that is getting a lot of attention ahead of what is going to be a secret vote tomorrow amongst Senate Republicans. We know that Josh Hawley has said he will back John Cornyn here locally out of Texas. I have not gotten a hold of Eric Schmidt or Roger Marshall on this yet. I invited both guys on the show today. They could not make it work. So we're trying to get a feel on what exactly this is going to look like ahead of tomorrow's vote, because also the vote's going to be secret. That's the one thing. I don't have a ton of angst right now, because I think all these three candidates are flawed in their own ways, and they all have their positives as well. And Trump has sat on the sidelines thus far with this thing, and the vote's tomorrow. So if he felt strongly, I feel like he would come out. Now, he could come out today with something, but he hasn't said anything yet. But the one thing that really is a turnoff is the secret vote side of this. Like, what are you afraid of? And that was called by McConnell to make it a secret vote. I don't know why. Dan's in Overland Park. He's got family up in South Dakota, where, of course, John Thune is considered one of the favorites to be the next Senate Majority Leader. Go ahead, Dan. You're on KCMO.
Morning, Pete. Born and raised in Vermilion. When John Thune was elected senator, if I'm not mistaken, he might have beat Tom Daschle back in 2004, circa 2004. I forget exactly. I never thought of him as a thought leader. He aligned himself very quickly around 2004 with the neocon faction of the Republican Party. As we all know, that's not really the faction that supports Donald Trump. Now, that said, I don't view John Thune as a thought leader. I don't mean to disrespect the man. He's a great man. I think that I think he will align himself with the leadership. I think in that respect, I think he'd be very effective at this job.
So this is interesting. Even though you're not really a fan of him and you don't think he's necessarily a guy with a strong backbone, he will just kind of go with the flow, and he will go with where the party is at because he's not really a thought leader, to use your words.
That's exactly how I view it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Kristi Noem, our governor, is going to be in Trump's cabinet. I was listening to Red Eye Radio over the evening.
Yep.
I forget what's going on there.
She's going to be the Homeland Security Secretary.
I tell you what, she's something else, and I'm very happy to see that. What's interesting, my brother's in Sioux Falls, that town is becoming a little Minneapolis. That town, the face of that town has changed dramatically over the last 20 or 30 years. A lot of immigration, all these things that a lot of us consider to be problems in America. Mm-hmm. Sioux Falls is kind of the face of that. There's a lot of money in that town, but the face is changing. A lot of African immigration into that town. And yet my brothers, one of whom is a pretty staunch Republican, they support Thune because he looks good. He looks like a Mitt Romney. They like a guy who looks good. And they don't like Kristi Noem because she battles. It's a weird dynamic in South Dakota.
That's interesting. Thank you, Dan. Has anyone checked in on old Cricket? See what Cricket thinks of Kristi Noem?
We can't check on him anymore.
That's right.
He's gone.
That's right. Cricket is 6 feet under. The Trump team did not run the Kristi Noem Homeland Security pick by old Cricket. Cricket didn't get any love for this pick, apparently.
Well, she's tough on him.
Yeah.
We know that much.
All right. As long as Kristi can't have a dog around as Homeland Security Secretary, we should be A-OK. All right, Frank, you're on KCMO. What's up, buddy?
Hey, good morning, Pete. I am not excited about the secret ballot. However, it occurred to me as you were saying that it might be a tactic for at least a time to keep the opposition peeling off those senators who may be not quite on board with that pick, not dropping their hand too quickly. for the opposition to see. That way they can't muster their troops out there to start campaigns or call-in campaigns for weak senators.
Yeah, that could be it there, Frank. You're right. That could be a part of the calculation here. Mike and Olathe, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, first thought when Holly was on the other day was McConnell obviously has generated a ton of funds to get him reelected because he would be a Scott guy in a heartbeat, I would think, because he preaches to be behind Trump and behind the movement, et cetera. But him coming out for Cornyn, I'm thinking, squish all over the place. My gosh. Because it has to be money. He has to owe McConnell, and he had to have agreed to do that because of all the windfall money that he got that some others didn't get.
There is a thought, there is speculation, and I don't know if it's true, but now people are suggesting that maybe Josh Hawley is setting up for a 2020 or 2028 presidential run, and maybe there are donors that Cornyn has access to that like Hawley. That's speculation. That's all it is, Mike.
That's nuts, though, because honest to God, wouldn't we want this face to just go on a 180-degree reversal, and he'd be a leader in that regard? His stock will go up no matter what Cornyn's people want. It's kind of weird, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of speculation as to why Hawley would go down the Cornyn route. It surprised me, but let's see how it plays out tomorrow. There's a lot that is going to happen between now and then on this Senate Majority Leader race between John Thune, Mitch McConnell, and Rick Scott. Next, could the makeup of the Kansas legislature now actually be a great thing for more school choice? We'll get to it next on 95.7 FM.